the Battle of Antietam. Well, I want to give you the results first. So the battle results are 4,700 to almost 37,000, almost 1 to 8 casualties. But the biggest thing is the number of casualties inflicted on the enemy. So we go into this battle with a significant advantage in numbers, as the North did historically, and we get 8 to 1, basically. But the important thing is, I'm showing you my cores, getting all of my units experience. And I want to get particularly the units in 2nd and 3rd Corps a lot of experience. Now this battle, I have played it at double speed. And the reason is I spend a lot of time waiting. I spend a lot of time waiting for my army to come up. Now the plan is, I'm going to jump ahead to the plan, is to bring my entire army up, which you can see here, and surround the Confederate center around Sunken Road. And this is, I'm able to do this. But what I do is, I do a lot of waiting. And so that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a very patient game with a lot of maneuver and a lot of waiting to bring up troops and bring up the entire army so the entire army can fight. And also, it's a long battle, so I spend a lot of time taking units that are tired and having them wait and recover condition and morale. So it's a very set-piece kind of battle. So back to the battle. 1st Corps, 2nd Corps, 3rd Corps. I forget to put in 4th Corps, which is interesting, which it's just a supply wagon. And when you watch this, pay attention to how none of my units run out of ammo in the battle. There's plenty of supply. Everything keeps firing without any problem. And that's the single most important thing you can do, is do that. Okay, on the left is Dunker Church, Sunken Road, Burnside Bridge, Sharpsburg in the back. This is one of the most brilliant defensive positions. I highly recommend going to this battlefield if you get a chance. It is beautiful. It is amazingly small. 23,000 casualties in such a tiny area is mind-boggling. You can see almost the entire battlefield from the visitor center. The battle starts out, and I'm going to take 1st Division and I really don't care about the objective flags. They don't really matter. What I really want to do is get behind the woods around Dunker Church. I don't want to attack down those cornfields. Now, historically, this is impossible, by the way. If you go to the battle, the battle is going to be at double speed because there's a lot of waiting and a lot of time when not much happens but maneuvering, which isn't terribly exciting. The Union Army could not have advanced here like this. This area to the north of the Confederate line was filled with the entire Confederate cavalry was over here. Most of the Confederate artillery was here, and for a very good reason. The idea was, when the North attacked through those cornfields to the right of this location, the artillery would hit the Union lines of infantry in the flank and hit them with enfilade fire. In other words, cannonballs would just roll through and knock men down like bowling pins. And they did, and that's one of the reasons why the attack through those cornfields was so bloody, is that these attacks happened perpendicular to the alignment of the Union troops. But Lee, if you take a look at this battlefield is set up in a series of right angles. And no matter where you attack, someone's going to be on your flank firing down the entire length of your line. And it's absolutely brilliant. It's an amazing battlefield. Yeah, the area over here is actually very rough. There were a lot of folks here. This wasn't empty, and this couldn't happen. But in the game, it can. So, that's fine. Yeah, the cornfields over to the right are people described it as you could walk across those cornfields and never touch the ground, one description. And the corn was cut as closely as someone could cut it with a knife. So huge batteries of artillery over here just fired into those cornfields. And they had all the time in the world to make sure they had the right distance and range and elevation to just do maximum damage to any troops that walk through that open area. And then when the Hooker, the commander over that launched that attack, when he did, his troops got slaughtered. So my goal here is just to get kind of to the north and then maneuver around to the side of those woods. I don't really want to fight through those woods going north to south. I really want to just wait until my troops come up and hit him with overwhelming numbers. So yeah, you're going to see this a lot. Move up the infantry, move up the artillery, and then wait. There's a lot of that in this battle. So now I'm just waiting patiently for the rest of my army to come up, and then we'll advance. Move up the infantry to a nice covered and concealed position. I recommend advancing with skirmishers. Skirmishers have far more visibility than infantry units. Advance with skirmishers so you can see what's in front of you sooner. It's very helpful. Your artillery can get firing a little faster. Bring up the artillery, and I have them set to not fire because I don't want them to distract the enemy while I'm maneuvering into place. Yeah, everyone's in place. Let the skirmishers initiate this and start to weaken the enemy, get the infantry moved up into the positions in cover and concealment, and now 1st Division can get back on the move. They've had plenty of time to recover all of their condition. And that's pretty much how this battle goes. Slowly and methodically outmaneuvering the enemy first and advancing with strong units to good positions, advance the infantry, skirmishers in front, and then bring up the artillery in support, blast away for a while. The enemy has to fall back because the force is overwhelming, and then rinse and repeat. This force on the right, their objective is to get around the flank of Sunken Road and then come up and cut it off from the rest of the army. So the whole objective in my mind is to surround Sunken Road and then annihilate that little pocket. Because it's there. The enemy's going to defend that. It's there, so I'm going to take advantage of that. By the way, I did the same thing in Sid Meier's Antietam. I would always surround the Confederate army around Sunken Road. The difference is that in Sid Meier's Antietam, enemy units surrendered when they were surrounded, which is actually a vastly superior mechanic compared to what happens in Ultimate General Civil War. there are a couple things that still need to be fixed in Ultimate General Civil War. And one of the things is that units that are surrounded in this game will rout and then retreat through your units, even though your units are not routed or tired, high morale. They will just, the enemy routed units will rout into you, melee with you, and then retreat through your units. And that's just completely wrong. That's completely broken. The only thing that's worse is sometimes enemy cav will just do the invisible cav trick where they just pass through your infantry and nothing happens. They don't take any, there's no melee, there's no losses. That's just completely a bug. So those two things still need to be fixed. But in Sid Meier's Antietam, enemy units that were surrounded didn't do that. They behaved normally and rationally. They did not rout into you and fight to the death, and they did not, they would tend to surrender. So you could basically capture most of the Confederate army if you surrounded them at Antietam. But anyway, we are able to surround a big pocket of them, and that's the goal. So I'm behind the enemy line, so I have a chance to get some shots on this artillery, so I'm going to go ahead and take that. That's always good. Now, historically, the North didn't do this. They just came down through these cornfields. And the Confederate artillery, about the location, that big open area, not just the big open area where the American flag is now, but all through that area where I now have my troops that's open, fired and hit the advancing Union troops in the flank. Because they came down north to south, and their lines were basically lined up with the fences. And as they went across cornfield after cornfield, the Confederate artillery just tore them up, and Confederate infantry fired from behind these fence lines and tore them up. And good news for them, as they got closer and closer to Dunker Church, that is a great defensive position. The woods, absolutely tremendous cover. And then there's a hill where today there's a visitor center that's able to just have great line of sight and visibility and just blast away at any approaching infantry. And they did. There was just there's a hill, which you can't really see it on the map, but if you're there and you visit this area, you stand at that visitor center and you look out, the line of sight and the visibility of the gunners is just amazing. You have complete complete visibility of the advancing Union troops. There's very little melee in this battle. Now that I think about it, about the only time there is any melee is in this entire battle is when routed enemy units retreat into my infantry. the enemy is able to charge into me only a couple of times. And usually it goes very, very badly because I'll have lines of infantry supported by massed artillery, and so it doesn't last very long and it doesn't go very well. Very few times there's any melee at all in this battle. Just overwhelming infantry fire. Now there's some troops over in the woods to the right. I'm not. There are going to be some more troops coming in a moment, and I'm perfectly happy. I'm not advancing Second Division. I'm just patiently waiting for the reinforcements to come in. Advance a little bit, bring up reinforcements. Advance a little bit, bring up reinforcements. It's each division has very limited goals, and when they accomplish that, then they wait, they rest. As the battle expands and more troops come in, then the idea is just to patiently wait. So that's about perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. That part of the battle turned out better than I hoped because I occupy all the woods, and if the enemy... I want to be in the woods for the cover and concealment. I don't want to have to push the enemy out of those woods. I want the enemy, if they attack, to attack me in those woods. So you'll see me do that a lot, to advance, take a good position of cover and concealment, and then wait for the enemy to attack me. So this is another example of that. Apparently there's a bit of a bug where the AI counts your commander and your supply wagon as units. So although the game will say you can bring in however many units, you can actually bring in less than that. I'm going to have to pay attention to that going forward. Because that means 4th Division will always be under strength, or it will always have two units less than I think it's going to have. And that's important because you never want to put money into units that aren't going to be in the next battle. And if units aren't going to be in the next battle, and I put men and material and guns into a unit that's not going to show up, that's a waste of money. So I'm going to have to. I just became aware of that. Spectrum said it in his video that I watched, and I wasn't aware of it. So I'm going to have to pay attention to that. And if you're playing, then now you know. Spectrum, by the way, is doing a great series. There are a bunch of guys doing really good series of Ultimate General Civil War, and his is one of them. And I really, he plays a very, very different style, builds a very different kind of army, and it's really interesting. I'm very interested to see how that turns out. Personally, I like really big. I like building a really big army, and I like inflicting a lot of casualties on the enemy. That's one play style. You don't have to do that. You can build really small elite units. In fact, you can do pretty much anything you want and win the campaign. So it is interesting, though, to me that the AI scales to you. So in the real world, the enemy doesn't scale to you. They just bring whatever troops they bring to the battlefield. I don't know. It makes the game playable, no matter what style you like, but that part isn't very realistic. The enemy army would be whatever size it is, and that it's kind of hard to calculate, I guess, how big the Confederate Army would be in this battle um, after they've taken all the losses that they've taken in the previous battles, because they've taken far greater losses here than they did historically. So, you know, it's hard. It's hard to find a balance. What I will say, if you play this style that I'm playing, which is just use the weapons the game gives you, build a big army, from this point to maybe Muleshoe, um, the game is really easy on normal difficulty. You just have such a big, powerful army that just overwhelms the Confederacy, and you inflict so much damage on them in every battle. At this point, it's you're going to get so much experience because if you're inflicting huge losses on the enemy, your units are going to get so much experience and so many weapons. I mean, just think about it. In this campaign, I inflict over 750,000 casualties. And I think you recover 12% or more of the enemy weapons. You know, that's an enormous amount of weapons. That's an enormous number. So basically, it feels like from Antietam on, I'm able to supply my entire army with what I pick up between battles for free. And getting really high kill ratios means that your units are just going to go up and up and up in experience. And after this battle, I basically have 3 corps that have all of the units have 1 star. And the only thing that limits my ability to be able to make all the units 2500 is I haven't built a strong enough officer corps yet. But pretty soon I'll have enough generals and colonels that I'll have 3 corps with all 2500 men in every unit. So I'm not attacking over on the right. I'm just moving across the bridge, hopefully to get him to attack me. Notice that I tell my units, I give them individual paths so they don't go through the woods. It takes units forever to go through the woods, and they come out the other side tired. So, I'm giving them a path that keeps them out of the woods as much as possible. Keep the supply wagon moving. Yeah, I'm firing really long distance with artillery that isn't long range artillery is just a waste of ammunition. So I'm not going to do that. I'm very happy to have the enemy attack um, these positions where I have lots of cover and concealment and lots of artillery support. That's great. So another division is coming up, and we're going to extend the line. And then the next division is coming in from the north, and he'll be able to extend the line a little bit more. And the enemy is reinforcing Sunken Road, which is exactly what I want him to do. I want him to put all those troops in Sunken Road. If you see the Sunken Road, it really does look more like a World War I trench than anything else. It's just a natural trench position. By the way, near Dunker Church, to the left of Dunker Church, a Union division did attack in there, going right to left across the battlefield in the afternoon phase of the battle. That position over there, there's a steep drop off. It's also like a trench line, except with a woods in front of it. It's a worse position to attack than the sunken road because it has cover, it has concealment, it has big trees in front of it, and it's like a trench where the men are able to lie down in a prone position, except their entire body is below the ground. It's like a little slope, and it's a perfect defensive position. And when the Union troops attacked in there, they got absolutely slaughtered. I think the number just off the top of my head was 1,500 casualties in 15 minutes. I think that's. I'm just doing that off the top of my head. It might have been a little longer. Um, but the other part of it was that they got counterattacked in the flank as well. Also, beautiful, beautiful positions. It's like this undulating land, and the troops were able to come up and just give this withering fire in the flank and rear of the enemy massed troops. And so the enemy got hit front, flank, and rear. Basically, troops that were in cover and concealment and entrenched, what looks like very much like entrenched positions, where basically the only part of your body that's a target is your head and your right shoulder, I guess, and very tiny targets. And since most people tend to pull their shot high anyway, well, the net result was it was a slaughter, and the Confederacy suffered very little casualties in the exchange. Yeah, these defensive positions are amazingly good. Now, I know that the odds are that absolutely no one is listening to me talk right now. They're just jumping through the battle. If you get a chance, go to the other side of Sharpsburg. So if these positions actually had collapsed, part of the genius of this is on the other side of Sharpsburg are some of the best defensive positions you will ever see. No one ever talks about it. Apparently, no one ever goes there. But if first of all, Sharpsburg is a beautiful little town and well worth, seeing. And so is Shepherdstown, which is just across the river. Also a neat little place. But between Shepherdstown and Sharpsburg, um, if you take the road out of Sharpsburg, you will notice some of the most awful positions that an army would ever have to attack, ever. You would have to attack uphill into some of the most awful, I cannot imagine that McClellan would attack those positions and get all the way to the Potomac River. It's just unimaginable. And if you look at that and you look where Lee's headquarters is on the battlefield, which is on the other side of Sharpsburg, Lee did not think that McClellan would do it either. In fact, he said that he held that position. He held that position the entire next day as well. He didn't leave. He stayed the entire next day, and in these same positions. And he recognized that if McClellan attacked him in the positions that he had, that the Army of the Potomac would suffer horrible losses, just devastating casualties. And if these positions fall, there are even more horrible positions for the Army of the Potomac to attack on the other side. So it's not like some people think the Army of the Potomac takes these positions and then the battle's over. No. The Army of the Potomac takes these positions and then something more horrible is waiting on the other side. So the only question is, could the Army of Northern Virginia have taken those losses? Because the Army of Northern Virginia had taken a lot of losses the first day. And could they have gone through another day of really high losses and still been functional? So while I've been talking, the next division has rolled up, actually the first division of the next corps, second corps. And yeah, they're getting in position. And 1st Division, 1st Corps is continuing to move around the enemy flank, which is exactly where I want them. So, and the next division is coming through on the right of the screen, coming down on the right side, keeping them out of the woods as much as possible so they get here as quickly as possible and they're not tired. And there's no reason to rush. I'm just moving very patiently, very slowly across the battlefield. Advance infantry, advance skirmishers, advance infantry, roll the artillery up in support, blast away a little bit, let the enemy attack if it wants to, which is great. The more they attack, the more casualties they get for no purpose whatsoever. Just degrade their own units. And yeah, keep rolling up more and more troops, more and more artillery. I'm looking at all this infantry rolling into this battlefield, extending the flank. And once that artillery gets in place, it's going to be very, very tough. Basically, I'm advancing wood line by wood line. So yeah, and I just had units fall back and form a line because it's too early for them to get really engaged. So they were too far forward, so I just had them fall back. So the enemy decided to attack with one unit into that little pocket. That didn't last very long. The more the enemy advances, the more horrible its position is going to become. Yeah, it's time for me to start at least moving in the direction of getting behind the enemy with first division. So we'll start advancing. And most of the reserves are very close to being pulled up. So just waiting patiently, not attacking with the troops down by the bridge, or waiting patiently. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. If they get attacked, they'll defend. That they're not strong enough to attack on their own. That they will be really useful if they advance with everybody else. And that's their job. Their job is just to hold that side of the battle. So again, I'm creating a little box. Okay, the enemy's going to engage in melee, and I have a ton of artillery and infantry there to fire in devastating support fire, and this is going to go really badly for the enemy. Normally I would have hit fall back, but there's so much support there that this is going to be pretty devastating. Yeah, and the first unit lasts a second, so we'll see how long the second unit lasts. Yeah, I have no interest in attacking the sunken road head on, so I'd rather use it as a death trap. So those two units that attacked took a lot of casualties, and they've been routed, so that's great. Boy, there are some nice targets. Skirmisher units going after artillery. That's about perfect. That's just very lucky. So these units should be very well rested. What is taking that artillery unit so long to get up to the front line? So it's time to get everybody sort of moving forward because my reinforcements are almost up and I need them all to advance together. And the other thing is no gaps in the line. You don't want to have a hole in your line that units can retreat through. The other thing with this battle is the enemy will try to sneak units around to occupy victory locations. The enemy advanced an artillery unit once around my flank to try to take Dunker Church back, and that was really interesting. I had a couple infantry units back there, and I think a cab. I ran a cab unit back, and that went very badly for him. But attacking with artillery, that was an interesting idea. The troops that are coming into the battlefield are coming in at just the perfect time. I should be able to catch these guys in the open and just get a lot of experience. Yep, and the reinforcements have arrived. So that's perfect. Now everyone can advance. Really hope um, I really hope the enemy stays where he is long enough for my artillery to come up and to fire some close range shots into him. But typically, what happens is by the time they get there, by the time the artillery gets in place, the enemy will have fallen back. So now this is really important for the game. If you take that final victory location, there's a countdown clock that starts, and I think it might be 30 seconds, which is 30 minutes of game time, and the battle's over. So I can't take that location if I want the battle to go on and I want my units to fight. So I need about 3 units to hold this line. You can put units to the left of that position to fire into the enemy flank if you want to. I like to move artillery up right to that wood line right next to the Antietam Creek, and they can hit the enemy from the flank from that position. So yeah, and get the rest of the infantry, kind of try to get them into the battle. Just try to find locations where everybody can have something to fire at, I think is all I'm trying to do with those guys.